Shadows of the forgotten. Some secrets don't stay buried, they claw their way back. The night I returned to Blackwood, the air smelled of rain and old ashes. The kind of dampness that carried memory, thick and unavoidable. My name is Daniel. Ward and I once swore I would never set foot in this town again, but promises mean nothing when the past refuses to die. It was 11:47 p.m. when my phone buzzed, dragging me out of restless sleep. A single text from an unknown number. She's not dead. Come back if you want the truth. No signature. Just those 6 words that refused to let me breathe. She. The only she that mattered in my life was Claire, my younger sister. She had vanished 12 years ago, the night of her 17th birthday. The official word was that she drowned in the lake during the storm. The police found her necklace tangled in the reeds, and everyone accepted the tragedy. Everyone except me. I never believed she drowned. There was no body, no closure, just silence that rotted inside me. And now, after all these years, a message claiming she was alive. By morning, I was on the road, driving through endless miles of highway with the old cassette tapes of my youth humming low in the background. My reflection in the windshield looked older than my 36 years. Lines carved by sleepless nights and the heavy weight of unanswered questions. I had built a life far away from here, in a city where my last name didn't drag whispers, through crowded bars, but none of that mattered anymore. When the town sign appeared, "Welcome to Blackwood, a place to call home," I almost laughed. Home. This place was a graveyard for hope. The streets hadn't changed. Same boarded-up diner on the corner, same cracked pavement leading toward the church. The lake shimmered in the distance under a dull, cloud-choked sky, and I had to grip the steering wheel harder just to keep driving. I checked into a shabby motel on the outskirts, the kind where the air smelled of mildew and the wallpaper peeled in strips like shedding skin. The woman at the desk looked at me too long, recognition lighting her face before she quickly looked away. Everyone here remembered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spread the printed text on the nightstand, reading it over and over, as if a hidden meaning would reveal itself. I scribbled questions in the margins of a motel notepad. Who sent it? Why now? Where is Claire? At 3:12 a.m. I heard the sound. A soft scrape at the window. My pulse stuttered, and I crossed the room, yanking the curtain aside. Nothing but the neon glow from the flickering motel sign. Then I saw it. On the glass, faint but deliberate, a handprint. Small. Feminine. The kind of handprint that froze every cell in my body because it looked exactly like hers. Claire used to press her hand against mine when she was little, laughing about how small she was in comparison. That shape. Those fingers. I remembered them. I stumbled back, heart hammering against my ribs, and for a moment I wasn't in a motel room. I was drowning in memory, dragged back to that night 12 years ago. The storm. The search party. My mother screaming her name until her voice broke. Sleep never came. By dawn, I drove to the house I once called mine. It stood on the edge of town, a crumbling silhouette against the trees. Empty now, abandoned since the year after Claire's disappearance. My parents couldn't bear it. They left, and they never came back. The front door creaked open with a push. Dust coated everything. Faded photographs on the mantel stared back at me, my father's stern jaw, my mother's distant smile, Claire's wide eyes. I moved through the rooms like a trespasser in my own life. Then I saw it. On Claire's bedroom wall, the words scratched into the paint, faint, but still visible beneath the dust. Help me. My throat tightened. This wasn't my memory playing tricks. The letters were real, carved into the plaster with something sharp. And they hadn't been there before. I would have known. The floorboards groaned under my feet as I backed away. My chest felt hollow, my breath uneven. If someone had written that recently, it meant one of two things. Either Claire had been here, or someone wanted me to think she had. The buzzing of my phone made me flinch so hard I almost dropped it. Another message. No number. No name. Just a location pin dropped near the edge of Blackwood Lake. I should have gone to the police. I should have questioned everything. But reason didn't matter anymore. If there was even the smallest chance Claire was alive, I would follow it. By late evening, I was at the lake. The water stretched dark and silent, the trees swaying like sentinels in the wind. I followed the path to the pin's coordinates, each step dragging me closer to the place that had haunted me for more than a decade. The trail ended at the water's edge. I stood there, staring into the black surface that had swallowed every answer. Then I saw it. A lantern, faintly glowing across the water, deep in the trees on the opposite shore. Someone had left it there, waiting for me. I leaned closer, and that's when I noticed it. On the ground at my feet, half buried in the mud, was a necklace. Claire's necklace. The same one the police had pulled from the reeds 12 years ago. Except this one wasn't tarnished or broken. It was clean. Untouched, as if it had just been placed there, and the clasp was still warm. The necklace burned in my hand as though it carried the heat of someone else's skin. My sister's necklace, supposedly lost to the lake 12 years ago, was lying in fresh mud, as if placed there for me to find. I turned it over, my thumb, grazing the tiny locket she never took off. Inside was a picture of us as children, smiling, whole. My breath caught. The clasp was warm. Every instinct told me I was being pulled into a trap, but reason never wins against blood. I pocketed the necklace and stared at the lantern across the lake. Its glow pulsed faintly in the shifting wind. A signal. A lure. I followed the shoreline, the woods closing around me in shadows. The ground was slick from last night's rain, each step uncertain, as though the earth itself wanted me to fall back, to leave this truth buried. The trees seemed alive, branches whispering secrets overhead. By the time I reached the lantern, dusk had dissolved into night. The lantern sat at the base of an old oak tree. Next to it, nailed into the bark, was a note. A single sheet of paper, the edges curled from moisture. My hand trembled as I unfolded it. If you want to see her again, stop looking for help. Watch the house at midnight. I scanned the trees, pulse racing, every shadow a possible threat. The silence pressed in on me, thick, suffocating. Whoever left, the note knew I was here. They were watching. I extinguished the lantern and moved quickly back through the forest, checking behind me with every step. Once I reached my car, I sat in the dark for several minutes, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The eyes staring back at me were haunted, but not by ghosts, by the possibility that Claire might truly be alive, and in danger. Midnight. The house. Back at the motel, I couldn't sit still. The hours stretched like wire pulled too tight. My mind replayed everything, the handprint on the glass, the message, the necklace. Either someone was orchestrating a cruel performance, or my sister had slipped through death's grip and remained, a prisoner of secrets I couldn't yet see. When the clock struck 11:45, I drove to the old family home. The streets were deserted, every window dark, every porch sagging under the weight of years. Parking a block away, I approached on foot, sticking to the shadows. The house loomed against the night, its roof angled like a broken spine. The air smelled of dust and rot, but beneath it something sharper like smoke. I crouched in the overgrown weeds, eyes locked on the windows. Midnight ticked closer. At exactly 12, a light flickered on inside Claire's room. My heart stilled. That room had been empty for over a decade, yet the pale glow spilled through the glass as if she had returned to it, as if time had rewound. I crept forward, every nerve screaming, and reached the side of the house. The curtain twitched, a faint shadow shifting behind it. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow. Slowly, I peeked around the frame of the window. What I saw stole the air from my lungs. Claire. She stood there, bathed in the dim light, her hair longer but unmistakable, her face pale, eyes wide. She raised a hand slowly, pressing her palm against the glass just as she had done as a child. For a second, my entire body surged with relief. She was alive. She was here. But before I could move, before I could knock or call her name, the light snapped off. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving me staring at nothing. Panic ripped through me. I scrambled around the house, trying doors, pounding on the back entrance. Every lock was sealed, every window dark. When I circled back, the house, looked as abandoned as it had earlier that day. Then I heard it. A sound carried by the night air. Laughter, high, brittle, echoing through the trees. Not the laugh of a child, nor the familiar laugh of my sister. This one was wrong, distorted, like glass breaking inside my ears. I spun, searching the shadows, but saw no one. My skin prickled with cold realization. Someone wanted me to see her, to believe. They wanted me desperate enough to follow wherever this game led. By the time I stumbled back to the motel, dawn was breaking. I hadn't slept in nearly 2 days, yet adrenaline kept me awake, thrumming through my veins. On the nightstand, the motel notepad lay open where I had scribbled my questions before. A new message was scrawled across the page, in handwriting that wasn't mine. "You're closer than you think, Daniel. But not close enough." I froze, staring at the ink, my body locked in terror. Someone had been inside my room while I was gone. My gaze drifted toward the mirror above the dresser. And there, drawn in streaks of condensation as if from a hand dragged across the glass, was a single word. Run. The word lingered on the mirror, dripping down the glass as though written in breath that hadn't belonged to me. Run. My pulse hammered in my chest. But where could I run when the only thing pulling me forward was the possibility that my sister was still alive? The motel room felt smaller now, walls closing in, stale air pressing against my lungs. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times, even sliding a chair under the handle. It didn't matter. Someone had already been inside, and the fact that I hadn't heard them meant they were close, watching, maybe even enjoying my panic. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the image of Claire's face in the window. The way her hand had pressed against the glass. It hadn't been random. It was deliberate. A signal, a cry, a confirmation that she was real. Yet the laughter that followed, twisted and unnatural, gnawed at me. Was she alive, or was someone puppeteering her memory to destroy me? By morning, I knew I couldn't do this alone. Not officially. The police would dismiss me, maybe even label me unstable after all these years of obsession. But there was one person in Blackwood I still trusted, Detective Lena Hart. She had been a rookie the night Claire disappeared, barely older than me, and she had fought against the tide when everyone else wanted the case closed quickly. She never believed in the drowning theory either. I found her at the station, her badge now weighted with years of service, her eyes sharper but wearier. She studied me the way someone studies a ghost, half believing, half regretting. I didn't tell her everything, not about the texts or the handprint. Only that I had reason to believe Claire was still alive, that I had seen her at the house. Lena didn't dismiss me, but her silence was heavy. Finally, she told me something that made my blood run cold. 3 days ago, before I even returned to Blackwood, someone had filed an anonymous police tip. A woman claiming to be held captive had whispered one name before the call cut off. Claire. The call traced back to a payphone near the edge of the lake. I left the station with that knowledge burning a hole through me. If Claire had reached out, then she was alive, somewhere close. The necklace, the window, the note, they weren't just tricks. They were breadcrumbs. I drove to the payphone. Rust coated the booth, weeds climbing its metal frame. The receiver dangled by the cord, swinging slightly as if touched by unseen hands. I lifted it, pressing it to my ear. Dead silence. Then, faintly, the click of the line. My breath hitched. A voice whispered through the static. Not Claire's. Deeper. Male. Calm. You're too late. The line went dead. I dropped the receiver, my hands trembling. Whoever was doing this was always one step ahead, watching, waiting. As I turned back toward my car, something caught my eye. Carved into the metal side of the payphone, jagged and rushed, were letters. At first unreadable, then sharp under the morning light. Lake House. The words lodged themselves into me. There were dozens of houses scattered along the lake, many abandoned after floods and storms. Which one? That was the trick. By dusk, I found myself driving the old road skirting the shoreline, scanning every decaying cabin, every collapsed boathouse. Most were empty shells, windows shattered, roofs caved in. Yet one stood apart. A small house tucked deep among the trees, curtains drawn though no one had lived there for years. I parked far down the road and walked the rest of the way, every crunch of gravel sounding too loud. The house loomed, its porch sagging, but faint light leaked from the cracks in the shutters. Someone was inside. My hand tightened around the necklace in my pocket. If she was in there, I had to know. I stepped onto the porch, boards groaning beneath me. The door was unlocked, swinging open with the faintest push. The smell inside was sharp, mold, damp wood, and something metallic. My stomach turned. The living room was a skeleton of its past, broken furniture, wallpaper curling from the damp. But in the center, placed deliberately, was a chair. On it lay a cassette tape, black plastic gleaming faintly in the dim light. My heart pounded as I picked it up, sliding it into the old player on the table. The tape hissed, crackled, then a voice emerged. Claire's voice. Daniel. If you hear this, they're watching me. Don't trust them. Don't trust anyone. The recording cut off with a sharp click. I froze, unable to move, the words echoing through my skull. She was alive. She was near. And she was warning me. The floorboards creaked above my head. Slow. Heavy. Someone else was here. I looked up at the ceiling, every muscle coiled tight. The sound grew closer, deliberate, as though whoever it was wanted me to hear, and then the footsteps stopped, directly above me. The silence after the footsteps was worse than the sound itself. My breath came shallow, ears straining for the smallest shift of weight above me. The ceiling seemed to bow with the weight of whoever stood there. One movement, one sound, and they could descend. I forced myself to move, each step toward the staircase deliberate, quiet. The cassette tape still hissed faintly in the player, Claire's warning echoing in my head. Don't trust anyone. The stairs groaned as I placed my foot on the first step. The air grew colder, carrying the faint scent of smoke. I climbed slowly, pulse drumming against my temples, until I reached the landing. The hallway stretched ahead, doors closed on either side. Then a shadow shifted beneath the door at the far end. Someone was inside that room. I tightened my grip on the banister, but before I could take a step, the door swung open on its own. The room beyond was dark, empty. The shadow had vanished. I stepped inside cautiously, the floor creaking under my weight. The room was bare except for a single object in the corner, a box. I knelt, fingers brushing against the worn wood, and slowly lifted the lid. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Every picture was of Claire. Some were from our childhood, her at school, birthdays, standing by the lake. But others were recent. Too recent. Images of her standing near shops I recognized, walking down streets, even at the edge of the woods. My hands shook as I shuffled through them. Whoever had these had been following her for years, watching, recording. At the bottom of the box was one final photo, a picture of me, taken just yesterday, outside the motel. The breath locked in my throat. I dropped the stack of photographs, the sound echoing too loudly in the still air. A noise cut through the silence. Footsteps again, this time descending the stairs. Someone had been waiting for me to find this. My survival instinct screamed, louder than curiosity. I backed away, slipping through the doorway, and hurried down the hall. The front door loomed ahead. As I reached for the knob, a whisper brushed past my ear. Too close. I spun, heart hammering, but the hall was empty. The door gave way, and I stumbled into the night air, sprinting for the tree line. I didn't stop until the house was a shadow behind me, its windows dark as if no light had ever glowed inside. Back at the car, I locked the doors and sat gripping the wheel, lungs burning. The photographs lay burned into my memory. Claire alive, watched, stalked, and me, suddenly part of their collection. I needed answers. Lena Hart was the only one who might believe me, but Claire's voice echoed again. Don't trust anyone. The thought gnawed at me. What if Lena wasn't the ally I remembered? What if she was part of this web? Still, I couldn't stand alone in the dark any longer. I drove straight to her house. She lived outside town, in a small place near the woods. When she opened the door, her expression flickered. Relief, but also something else, something guarded. I told her about the photographs, the tape, the shadow in the house. She listened, but her eyes darted to the window more than once, as if expecting someone to arrive. Finally, she led me into her office, pulling out a file she claimed she had kept hidden for years. Inside were documents, maps of the lake, notes scribbled in her careful hand. She revealed something I hadn't known. Claire's case had never been formally closed. Officially, it was marked unresolved, but off the books Lena had been investigating. The lake had been searched twice, but she had evidence suggesting someone tampered with reports, altered timelines, even destroyed witness statements. Someone powerful had ensured the drowning story stuck. She leaned closer, voice low, telling me she believed Claire had been taken, and not just her. Other disappearances stretched back 20 years, all near the lake, all dismissed with tidy explanations. Her words should have reassured me, but something about the way she looked at me, the way her hand lingered on the file, sent unease crawling through my veins. Before I could question her further, my phone buzzed. Another message. My blood ran cold as I read it. You're in the wrong house. Get out now. I lifted my eyes to Lena. She noticed the change in me, her expression sharpening, her hand drifting subtly toward the drawer of her desk. The silence between us stretched, electric and dangerous. And then, with terrifying clarity, I realized the truth. The handwriting in Lena's file, the same handwriting that had scrawled across my motel notepad. The realization hit me like ice water down my spine. The handwriting in Lena's hidden file was identical to the note left in my motel room. She wasn't just investigating, she was part of it. Every breadcrumb, every whisper, every photograph had been orchestrated, and she had been watching me walk straight into it. Her hand hovered at the desk drawer, steady, too deliberate to be casual. A weapon, I thought. My throat tightened as my phone slipped quietly into my pocket. I forced myself not to move too quickly, not to let her see the truth unraveling inside me. She smiled faintly, a practiced curve of her lips. You've always been stubborn, Daniel, but you're finally asking the right questions. My skin prickled. This wasn't the Lena I remembered. The woman who had once been the only authority figure to take me seriously when Claire disappeared was gone. In her place stood someone who had shaped the silence, nurtured it, maybe even profited from it. The urge to run fought with the need for answers. My voice came out rough, colder than I expected. Where is she? Her smile faltered for the briefest second, then hardened. Closer than you think. The drawer clicked open, metal scraping wood. I lunged before she could reach whatever lay inside, slamming the desk shut with my weight. She staggered back, surprise breaking her composure. I didn't wait. I tore out of the house, the night air burning my lungs as her voice echoed after me. You'll never save her if you don't play by the rules. I didn't look back. The road blurred under my tires as I drove without direction, every muscle locked in adrenaline. My phone buzzed again. Another message. The truth is, in the order midnight, come alone, the lake, always the lake. By the time I reached the shoreline, the world was silent, the surface of the water black as glass. My headlights cut across the trees, revealing the outline of a boathouse sagging at the edge of the dock. It looked abandoned, like everything else here, but a faint glow seeped through its cracks. I stepped out, the necklace tight in my grip, the night swallowing the sound of my footsteps. The dock groaned under my weight as I approached. The door to the boathouse was ajar, swaying slightly in the breeze. Inside, the air reeked of damp wood and gasoline. A lantern burned on the floor, its light weak but steady. And in the center, tied to a chair, her head slumped forward, was Claire. My chest constricted. I stumbled toward her, whispering her name, though no sound seemed to leave me. Her hair fell in tangles around her face, her wrists raw from rope. When I touched her shoulder, she stirred, lifting her eyes. It was her. Pale, exhausted, but alive. Her lips parted, her voice barely a thread. "Daniel, it's not safe." The words had barely left her mouth when the door slammed shut behind me. The lantern flickered as footsteps approached from the shadows. A figure emerged, calm, deliberate, as if walking onto a stage. Lena. She held a pistol loosely at her side, her eyes glinting with something colder than duty. "You had to dig, didn't you? You had to believe she was still alive. You made this easier for me, Daniel. Much easier." My body froze between fight and collapse. "Why?" Her voice was steady, almost practiced. "Because some truths don't belong in the light. There are names tied to these disappearances that would unravel everything. Claire was never supposed to survive. But she did. And keeping her hidden has kept this town from burning." Claire's voice cracked through the silence, hoarse but sharp. "She's lying, Daniel. She's part of it, but she's not alone. There are others. Bigger." Lena's jaw tightened, the gun raised, time fractured into shards. I lunged, not for her, but for the lantern. The metal seared my hand as I hurled it toward her. Fire spilled across the damp floorboards, sudden and hungry. The gun fired once, deafening, splintering wood. I reached Claire, yanking at the ropes, the flames climbing higher, choking the air with smoke. She gasped as her bonds loosened, her body collapsing into my arms. Lena cursed, retreating toward the door, her silhouette warped by firelight. She didn't fire again. She only shouted over the roar of flames, her words carved into my skull. "You can't save her. You can't save anyone. You're already too late." Then she vanished into the night, leaving the fire and her threat behind. I dragged Claire out of the boathouse as the roof collapsed, sparks raining into the lake. We stumbled onto the dock, coughing, the air sharp with smoke. She clutched my arm, her voice breaking. "They'll come for us, Daniel. This doesn't end here." The boathouse burned until nothing remained but embers hissing against the water. I held her tighter, staring at the reflection of fire on the lake's black surface, knowing the war had only just begun. And in that moment, one truth settled deeper than any other. Claire was alive, but saving her was just the beginning. And this, my dear friends, is the end of this story. Thank you for walking through the shadows with me. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and suspense, be sure to stay with us for the next tale. Each story is darker, stranger, and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Subscribe and let the next shadow find you.